Hey, what's up, everyone? So, I just want to talk a little bit about preferences. Simply because there seems to be some weird wave of people who think that having a preference is somehow a bad thing or bigoted or wrong. And it just shocks me when, it's obvious that people have preferences for all kinds of things, whether it's chocolate over vanilla, like I prefer chocolate ice cream over vanilla ice cream, or whether someone likes country music or not, right? Clearly, some people love it and some people hate it. Uh, you know, some people like certain looks on people, right? They might prefer blonde hair, brown hair. They might like light eyes or dark eyes. And again, there's nothing wrong with having a preference. You have different tastes, different interests, and that's okay as long as you're not using violence against people or suggesting that other people are, subhuman or less than human just because, they have a certain attribute about them, that's just benign. I mean, there's really nothing wrong with having a preference. And I think that a big part of the problem is that some people have seen this idea of being like oriented or born in terms of the language being used, is that being some type of rationalization for their preferences. Because for some reason, now preferences is somehow some evil thing, right? So to get around preferences, some people are like, well, I was just born that way, or, I'm just oriented that way. And it's like, it just is kind of silly. There's obviously born traits in terms of what you may like or may be interested in genetically, just predisposed. I mean, obviously, as it comes to humans, there's already going to be a range of things that most all humans are either not going to like, taste-wise, something like that, if it's super acidic or super basic, in terms of the pH scale, there's limits to that. But again, within that range, there's going to be people who prefer things that are a little more acidic or a little bit more basic, right? So there's other things, though, that come along in life where you may end up developing a preference through experience. Maybe as a kid, you had certain foods that your parents, forced you to eat and you really didn't like it. Maybe it's a certain vegetable or fruit or something like that. Maybe you had a really good experience with a babysitter, right? And the babysitter looked a certain way. Maybe there was some like cute Indian girl or something like that. And you had a really good experience with her. She was always nice. And so, you grow up and you kind of have that kind of natural preference because of your positive experience. You could have a negative experience, right? A certain type of person may have harmed you, and you associate that harm with either that person, or you might, incorrectly, of course, group a whole group of people based on that bad experience. So the question then is just, okay, is your preferences based on something that's benign? In other words, it's not hurting anybody, it's just your interest, or is your prejudice based on something that is wrongful grouping? And I think the absurdities really get to be expounded upon when you just think about the idea of being attracted to a certain general label group, right? So let's just say someone is attracted based on sex, they could say male or female or something like that, right? Even if someone said, oh yeah, I'm attracted to girls, it doesn't mean you like every girl, right? You know what I mean? You can be attracted to girls, doesn't mean you like every girl that's out there. There's certainly plenty of, not attractive girls, or, girls that you would not be interested in. So, you know what I mean? So you could have a category of saying, oh, you have a preference for this direction, right? Or some people will say orientation, but again, it's what you prefer to have. And, that's okay. It's kind of implied, or it's implicit, understood that doesn't mean you like every person within that category, right? Like if you're gay, okay, does that mean you like every dude if you're a guy? No, duh. It's like, I mean, it should be so obvious that just because you're gay doesn't mean you happen to like every guy who happens to also say they're gay. It's kind of silly. So when someone says, oh, I have a preference for a certain aesthetic, right? It's not weird. If you say, oh, well, I'm attracted to darker skinned people, I'm attracted to Asians, I'm attracted to whatever. Yeah, obviously you're not attracted to every single person who is that category, right? There's going to be people that you just either don't like aesthetically, even within that group, or personality-wise, character-wise, of course. So whenever someone tries to criticize the idea of having a preference in that direction, it just makes me chuckle because, again, everybody has preferences and proclivities of what it is that they're interested in. Some people want to rest on saying, oh, well, I was just born that way. I mean, obviously, there's other epigenetic factors that come into play in terms of positive or negative associations that can, lead to your preferences changing, and also biological maturity, because your brain keeps developing until you're in your mid-20s, and your preferences in terms of even like things like taste or smell or music obviously changed. I mean, I imagine most of you here are probably not wearing the exact same style of fashion either that you wore, maybe 10 years ago. You probably have updated your wardrobe. So, again, these things are evolving and changing, but you might just have a preference for certain things in terms of taste, smell, visual attraction, things like that. So it's really kind of disingenuous, I think, for the people that try to hide preference under the idea of being born or orientation in that way. That is when they're trying to downplay preferences. I don't care if you say, well, I'm just born, I'm attracted to guys or girls, whatever. It's, I don't really care. But when you try to use that labeling to suggest that having a preference is wrong, I find it, quite hilarious. Simply because those attraction qualities are based on superficial things, right? If you like a categorical guy in terms of you like guys, okay, well, what is it about it, right? Is it because you like their member, the thing that's down below? That's a superficial thing. Saying you like guys or girls doesn't say anything about their character, their virtues, how they smell even, right? So it's kind of a funny thing that people often overlook when they make these kind of third wave SJW criticisms. So I just had to talk about that because I had a bunch of conversations on different threads with people with some of my comedy videos, and just reading some of the responses, and again, some of these people are, from what I looked at, not all there mentally, and some people are young, and I'm like, what do you do on my channel? Like, I put age restrictions on my videos, but kids obviously try to change their age on YouTube. But for some people who try to like legitimately write a criticism of it, I mean, I just have to bring it back to, again, what are you focused on? You know what I mean? And almost always it's superficial in terms of just some physical attribute of somebody, right? Like, it's like, okay, well, just because you like, that they have, either a, wiggly member down below or, something else down below, speaks nothing to the rest of their body, even though you have a default preference orientation of, oh, I like guys, and you think of that, their downstairs member, or girls, and you think their downstairs member. Again, that one element is just the beginning to attraction, right? It's not the end all be all just because, oh, you have that thing. Oh, well, I love you obviously now. It's so simple minded and kind of hilarious. So same thing goes again with even preferences as based on generic categories of race. It's an aesthetic, right? Like, you might like certain attributes: light eyes, dark eyes, lighter skin, darker skin, maybe common traits in terms of, their bodily composition. Like, if you have a higher, you could say, salt or, sodium, levels in your blood, you actually have changes in your hormones, pheromones, things like that. You can actually have different smells, you can say, or associations. And again, that's just a fact of life. Different groups of people have different things associated with them on a typical basis. It's not all always, but it's going to be things that you care to note, that you could actually, just see. Just like, oh, okay, yeah. I could see differences in people. It's like, okay. But again, there's a difference between saying, oh, okay, I just have a beginnings attraction based on some of these attributes, and, oh, yeah, I automatically love them. It's like, no, it's not the same thing. And there's a big difference, of course, with that and being bigoted, which is the idea of, oh, just based on your superficial benign characteristic, you're less than human. You should be treated less. And of course, that is, in my opinion, unethical, and in my ethics, absolutely wrong. So, it's one of those things where there's been a huge clouding of thinking, of just raw empirical philosophical thinking on these topics. And I think largely because of, what's going on in schools today, I would say, for what I've seen, how these different types of identities are being presented to kids, and, the kind of CRT, critical race theory stuff that's being taught really has got some of, these young kids' minds warped about these kinds of thinking. It's very like one-sided thinking, right? Like, the idea of, oh, when we do something, it's okay. When you do something, it's not. Like that type of hypocritical thinking. So there we go. So yeah. So hopefully you kind of see where I'm going at with this. And again, don't be ashamed of your preferences. There's nothing wrong with, again, whether it's liking chocolate over vanilla in your ice cream, or just being attracted to certain physical attributes of other people. On a generality, it's a starting point for attraction. In and of itself, there's nothing wrong with that. It's literally benign. Everybody has different preferences. And again, as long as you're not doing it to hurt somebody in terms of, say that a group of people doesn't deserve respect of their body or property, okay, well then whatever. So, all right, take care, everybody. I'll talk to you later.